Last year my neighbor plotted to kidnap and murder my wife and I. People Askreddit? Murder attempt survivors, what happened? My drunk, ex-husband came home in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. He was pissed off at me for some unknown reason and got on top of me in bed and strangled me to the point where he thought he had killed me. When I came to, he was sitting on the side of the bed crying. He had choked me so badly that I had broken blood vessels in my eyes. I never spent another night under the same roof as him and we divorced soon after. Reply: Did you put that rotten ducker in jail? I understand it can be difficult if perhaps there are children involved, but still duck him. Answer: I tried. He got a suspended sentence and mandated alcohol treatment. Which from what I hear ultimately didn't help him much. I'm the first of several ex-wives. Reply: Yeah. When someone in a relationship with you starts to choke you, that is beyond time to leave. When they start that behavior, the likelihood of their killing you goes through the roof. They won't stop that behavior if you leave. It'll come up again in their next abusive relationship and they'll maybe kill their victim next time. That said, I feel like victims of domestic violence and sexual crimes have no obligation to anyone but themselves. Just get yourself and any kids to safety. If you can then find the strength to involve law enforcement and if they are interested in prosecuting, and if you can deal with the legal process and if they experience any actual consequences, great. But it isn't the victim's responsibility to ensure that the offender is prosecuted. They've got enough trauma to deal with already. I was shot in 2012 while delivering pizza. I was in air traffic controller school at the time. I ended up mostly okay, but disqualified from my career because I had trauma-induced seizures as a result. Of the 3 attackers, 1 died in a motorcycle crash before trial and the other 2 were out of prison by 2016. Edit, lots of comments trees below, sorry I am not responding to everyone. I ended up changing careers and I work as a software dev at one of those tech giants. They can pin everything on their dead buddy, planning, acquisition of the gun. He is a convenient excuse. Their defense is that they did not know he was planning to hurt anyone and he acted alone. It's not a crime to be friends with a criminal, so one would have to prove that they had some foreknowledge of what was going to occur, and were not just nearby when their friend did something stupid. While I think everyone knows that's far-fetched, it's difficult to prove and there's no strong evidence to prove otherwise, and we cannot prove they ever handled the gun either. When people take plea deals, the likelihood of conviction comes into play. Because they might have been acquitted in a trial for attempted murder, they were offered a plea down to second-degree assault with a weapon which they accepted. The prosecutor did have a conversation with me before she offered the plea, but made it clear that the state does the prosecution, not the victim. When statues of George Floyd went up, I could not stop imagining how livid I would be had statues been erected to one of my assailants. Of course, Mr. Floyd was murdered and I am glad Siobhan was convicted. But if people started putting statues and murals of the scumbag up and pretending he accomplished something with his life, I think I would explode. Floyd was convicted of armed robbery in 2007. I don't think I would have thought like this before. These are the sort of things that change about you when you become a victim. Reply: got threatened with a gun after supposedly hanging up on him when he was ordering. I could hear him talk in the background and thought he couldn't hear me, so I hung up hoping he'd call back. Well, he did, ordered his shit, I go and deliver his stuff, then started berating me that I hung up on him, don't you know who I am shit, then pulls a gun on me because I dared say whatever. This was in the Netherlands. To this day I have no idea if that was a real gun. Fun times. Not me, but my mom. A man entered her house just before lunchtime and stabbed her and her maid multiple times. He also kept punching both of them while stabbing them. Eventually he got tired and left. My mom played dead, then when she was sure that they were alone, she checked on the maid to see if she was still alive. Both of them survived the attack, but the police never found the guy. The thing is, my mom knows the guy. See, she owns a flower shop, and had 2 people working for her. One of them is this nice gay guy, and that guy had a boyfriend. It was the boyfriend who attacked my mom, and my mom told me that he was high and was looking for money. It seemed like his boyfriend didn't want to give him money that day, so he decided to attack his BF's employer instead. Since then, my vibrant, outgoing mom became reclusive and she developed various health conditions. She's also always in a state of pain, which led her to become dependent on pain meds. The meds ruined her kidneys and liver, and now she's undergoing dialysis for it. I was attacked in a friend's house by an ex-husband. He slit her throat and slashed my face with a box cutter before hitting me over the head with a plate, knocking me out temporarily. He then lit the place on fire with us in it. I managed to wake up and drag her outside, and a neighbor called the police/ambulance. They caught him 2 days later trying to commit suicide in a Ramada inn. We both lived through it, and now he is serving a life sentence. Last year my neighbor plotted to kidnap and murder my wife and I. I was working from home one morning and heard a knock at the door at 8 a.m. I ignored it at first, hoping whoever it was would go away. After a minute of knocking, I opened the door. It was my neighbor who I had spoken with a few times. My wife was at work, and I could tell he was surprised when I opened the door and not my wife. He was expecting her to be home and not me. He noticed that I recently purchased a new car and asked if I could show it to him. He tried to walk inside, but I asked him to walk around to the garage because of COVID-19. I showed him the car and he was acting strange. Always kept one hand in his pocket. My garage is very small, so we were in close proximity to each other. He kept inching closer to me, which made me uncomfortable. He brought an open Coke bottle, filled with a tan liquid, and said, "I brought you a Coke." I declined the offer. After a few minutes he asked if he could see my gauge cluster. We walked around to the driver's side and I sat in the driver's seat to turn on the car and show him the gauge cluster. With door open, there was very little room besides the side of the car and the garage wall. After turning on the car, he pulled a large hunting knife to my neck. I immediately grabbed his wrist and slammed him back into the wall. At this point we are wrestling between the car and wall as I try to get the knife away from him. During this 30 seconds period, it seems like an absolute miracle that I was not stabbed. The blade grazed past my stomach multiple times. I was eventually able to grab the knife and force him out into the driveway. Immediately after grabbing the knife, he started saying, "What are you doing?" "I was just trying to show you my knife," and acting like I had just assaulted him. I was in such a state of shock that I actually started to believe him and wondered if I had overreacted. I know this seems ridiculous, but I was completely delusional at the time and did not know what his intentions were. I stood in the driveway, hands shaking, with 911 dialed on my phone, but did not make the call. He acted like nothing just happened and started asking my questions. Really suspicious questions. "Do you have a security system?" I lied and said yes. I asked him to go home multiple times and eventually went back inside the house, but did not shut the main garage door. At this point I needed to drive into work and started getting ready. Showering, getting dressed, I assumed he had just walked back home. After getting ready I went outside and walked around the house to the garage with a can of bear mace. I searched around the garage and was worried he was still there. As I started to get into my car and leave, I saw my neighbor laying down behind some boxes in the garage, staring at me. I yelled and ran as fast I could back to the front door and called the cops. Cops arrived quickly and my neighbor had disappeared. They searched around his house and mine but could not find him. They said they would stay in the area but were going to leave for now. My house is surrounded by woods and I have a large back porch. Frightened, I stood in the middle of the porch while holding bear mace. I looked around and noticed my neighbor hiding in the woods staring at me. I ran back inside and called the cops. Cops arrived quickly and pulled guns on my neighbor and arrested him. He later said I was just trying to scare him. They found the knife, zip ties, vodka, and a note on him that read, "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." It was later discovered that the Coke bottle he wanted me to drink contained pesticides. He was there to murder me or my wife. He was charged with 3 felony counts and is currently awaiting trial. Thank you for listening to another B-Town Reddit Stories episode. Hit the subscribe button and check out our channel for more stories. Let us know your opinion about this topic in the comments.